Good day, good people. How you all doing? Welcome to our international podcast, Below the Belt. Who vex lose, folks? That's what we say. Who vex lose? Who vex? It's their faces, everyone. Great to have each and every one of you here with us, guys. Welcome. We are recovering from the heavy rain yesterday. It rained today, folks. We're happy that you guys are here with us. Pace and power, boots on the ground. Do let us know. Do let us know how you guys are at your end. Great to have each and every one of you here with us. We put down our audio a little bit, but great to have you folks here with us, with we. Good to have you guys. Beatrice Selby is here, and Gloria Chester is here as well. Gloria from Diamond. Michaela Andrew Coates is here as well. Good to see Gwyneth Anderson. All you other beautiful, lovely folks. We are happy. We're so happy that you guys are spending this time with us. Person of interest today, folks. The one and only commissioner of GECOM, Vincent Alexander, is here with us, folks. We spoke with Mr. Alexander yesterday on a range of issues, guys, and he was as candid as could be. The shenanigans at GECOM. We're going to be talking about that and some additional things as the time progresses. How's lunch going where you guys are? Emily Durant, how is the weather where you are? Good to have you, folks. Kwesi Moffat is here. Great to have you, Kwesi. I see Simone Greaves is here as well, and Annette Cummins, and all the lovely folks, all the good-natured people. Great to have each and every one of you guys. Welcome. Good to see you, folks. Good folks. Good to see each and every one of you. How are you guys doing? Tell us. Let us know. How are you folks doing out there? Ann Nelson. We see you, Ann. We see you. Tessa Lane Eastman. We see you as well. It's all the good folks, all the great folks. Tessa Eastman, good to have you as well, Tessa. I see Denise Mitchell is here too. Welcome, Denise. Welcome, Marlon Trim. Welcome, guys. And we encourage you as you come on, share the live, touch that emoji button for us. Please do. Touch that emoji button for us. I see Amrit Rajnarain is here. Welcome, Amrit and Gladstone Matthews. Good to have you, Gladstone. Good to have you. Don Baines. I see Mona Moore is here as well. Good to have each and every one of you. Below the belt today, folks. That's where we hit in. Below the belt. Who get hit. Folks, smash that emoji button for us. Let us know how you all are feeling there, whether you're at home in the national capital city or in Guyana by extension, or you're abroad. Great to have you on wherever you're listening us from. We're so privileged. Without you folks, you all know we're just talking to ourselves. And that's the first indication. The elevator reaching the top floor. We don't want to talk to ourselves, folks. And so we are happy. We are supremely happy that you folks are here with us. We trust that work has been going good so far. Lunch is even better. That's our hope. That's our prayer. For you good folks, great to have each and every one of you. Guys, we have a couple of things we're going to touch on. And then we're going to circle back to our person of interest who I've known a long time. Who I have known, I've had the privilege of knowing for quite some time. And he's always been an upright, principled fella. The one and only Vincent Alexander. We're going to be talking with him. Folks, we sat down with him recently. We talked all things GECOM. We discussed the issues. We weren't talking people's name. Don't come around we like that. We were discussing the issues and how it is. Based on the issues, guys, we can move this country forward. Thanks for joining us. Those of you who are already with us, guys, we got a lovely shot of the East Bank corridor as you proceed. What is that? South, folks. You head out of the city and you're heading south. Beautiful shot. Picturesque shot.
First thing in terms of biometrics, it tells us about a physical feature that can be used to identify a person. In terms of that physical feature, you would be looking for a physical feature which is unique to an individual so it can be used to identify that person as being different from anyone else. There are two features which are prominent in that realm at this time. And those features are the eyes and the fingerprints. You may notice if you go to America and you enter in the country, they take pictures of two things, the eyes and your fingerprints. Why? Because each individual's eye is distinct and different from anyone else's. There's something about your eye. Even if your eye has the same anatomy like other people's eye, there's something in there, your iris or something, that is unique to you. And therefore, it can serve to identify you. Similarly, your fingerprints are unique to you. No two persons have the same fingerprints. And so those are things that can be used if you want to ensure who presents himself as person A, B, or C is in fact person A, B, or C who presented himself previously and gave you fingerprints or pics of the eye that you can now compare the actual fingerprint with the fingerprints on your database to ensure that it's one and the same person. You know, we had a GECOM meeting today. We were discussing biometrics. And one commissioner said, you know, this thing is in breach of the Constitution because the Constitution specifies that you must be 18 years of age and Guyanese, and that's all you need to vote. Anything else is an obstruction. And I said to him, he doesn't understand reality. All the fingerprints does, or the iris would do, is say you. So it doesn't conflict with the Constitution. It is saying you are you, and that is what the Constitution requires. That when you go to vote, that you're the person who registered under a particular name. And attached to that name, they will then have fingerprints, and we'll be able to match your live fingerprints with those in the database and to say, yes, you. You're the person who you purport to be now, and you purported to be when you got registered. So it's a mechanism that ensures that we comply with the Constitution from two perspectives. It's a mechanism, it does not take away any rights. It ensures that you're entitled to the right to vote on one hand, and it ensures that that provision which says GECOM has a responsibility for free, fair, and compliant elections is observed, because an election cannot be free, cannot be fair, and is not compliant if you have people voting for people who have died or who are not present. When you ensure that the person who is voting is a person who is entitled, then you're ensuring that the election is fair. You're ensuring it's compliant, and you're ensuring it is free.
Take a scan of your eyes because they're unique to you. You can't jit that. And then when you go to the place of poll, you scan your hand, you scan your eyes. You see, they can't duplicate that. And it offers a safeguard against impersonation. people that talking about rigging, they frighten this thing so till. They frighten it so till. It offers this safeguard, which at the end of the day is valid, credible information can flow from such a process. Valid and credible information. That is precisely what is going to flow from that process. But then boys don't want that out front parts. Edward Gonzalez from the Bronx, they don't want that in Guyana nor in the Bronx. They're frightened that Gwyneth Anderson, and that is what Commissioner Vincent Alexander, GECOM Commissioner Vincent Alexander, told us yesterday. These biometrics, fancy word. But we have a copy of your fingerprints in the system. We have a copy of a scan of your eyes. See? You scan your hand, you scan your eyes. Right? You see them boys wake up one morning thinking about the cemetery. It's people that are looking for, it's eyes and fingers, them boys. Them boys looking for eyes and fingers. That's what they're looking for. That's what they're after. That's what they're after. And so it impacts on the list because you got all of these dead people on the list. People who are non-resident. And lots of non-resident Guyanese, thousands of them, have died over the years in the diaspora. But the name's still on the list. Can't have a small population, 400,000, let's say. And your list is 800,000. There's something wrong there. You got duplicates. I mean, come to that. You got duplicates. We're going to come to that. Because the contention has been, we got this whole list of people, of which a sizable amount are people who are overseas and dead. The dead people list from GECOM. And so we put that to Mr. Alexander as well. Tell us about the list. What happened with the list? Because we want a sanitized list. That's what we mean by sanitized. It must be cleared of all of these impediments, the dead people, whether locally or overseas. And perhaps, some other things in the list. Messing up the list. But them boys ain't having it. Even though Nandral of this morning said, he has never spoken a word against. Never spoken a word against this. Biometrics, that is. And here Vincent Alexander talks to us about this list. And why is it so important? We got dead people on the list. Take a listen, folks.
We have irrefutable evidence. We have got documents from the Chief Immigration Officer, who is the recipient of the records of people who leave and return to Guyana. And he has been able to say that names submitted to him, which were extracted from GECOM records of the persons who voted. When you go to vote, there's a pink slip, and the names of the people who vote are struck off on that pink slip. Names were taken from those pink slips of persons who were struck off and were checked against the record of Guyanese who have gone overseas, and it has been determined that they are persons whose names are struck off, who were out of the country at the time of elections. And therefore, you don't have to ask any other question. The question simply is, somebody voted for someone else. And all of the arguments about all of the mechanisms that are there, yes, they're there. Yes, they're helpful. But that notwithstanding, the evidence has shown that persons were able to breach the system for whatever reason. And so, what we're trying to do is to implement a system that reduces and hopefully completely eliminates the problem of the system being breached. And I ask the question over and over, why would people object to this? People can only object to this if they have a benefit to be derived from the system as it is presently, a system which has been breached. There is nothing they can argue that is detrimental to their right by putting in place a mechanism that seeks to ensure that only persons who are entitled to vote actually exercise the franchise. And I further had to make the point that what we're trying to do is not rocket science. This is done across the globe. It is, in fact, an electoral best practice. So people who mouth off democracy, people who mouth off free and fair elections, should really embrace and hug this approach, which brings you to free and fair elections. And here it is. We have people who are backing off from that. Not only backing off, but trying to ensure it never happens. That's undoubtedly an indictment on those persons that they would not want to see a mechanism such as that put in place that will ensure there can be no impersonation at the elections, as occurred in 2020, based on evidence produced and verified by the relevant statutory authority, in one instance, the chief immigration officer, who was able to check the records of people who left, people who have returned, against the records of people who voted, and saw in instances where those persons who were out of the country were voted for. We have
Yep. Them boys say, according to Anil, he has not uttered a word against biometrics, but he for biometrics either, because he would want to be clearing up the list. And one way you do it is through biometrics. That when you go and you vote, you press your thumb, they say, hey, it's you, big head. Hey, it's you, Bowfoot. Hey, it's you, Scatterbox. Right? And they can verify and certify electronically because your eye is unique to you. Your hand is unique to you. Unique features that are universally acceptable. And we're going to circle back to this whole issue of, them sending the lists of dead people to the GRO to verify, and sending the list of those overseas to the chief immigration officer to verify. And it coming back as being conclusive. But them boys are like that. Them boys don't like it came back as being conclusive. They were people who were dead on March 2nd, 2020, who voted because a tick was placed next to their name on that pink folio indicating that they voted. And the same for the people from overseas, same for the people in the burial ground. You see? So we circle back to the list. And exactly how do we get about, what is the word? Exculpating, lifting, moving, removing, cleansing, sanitizing the list. Here is the commissioner of GECOM. Here is the commissioner of GECOM, Mr. Vincent Alexander.
no right-thinking person can argue our list does not have names that should not be there. For the simple reason, any Guyanese who's present in Guyana at the time of registration is entitled to be registered. As a consequence of that, thousands, literally thousands of Guyanese between 2008 and present have been present in the country at the time of registration and would have left. So nobody can question that. And in fact, the Constitution gives them the right to register. And some people argue that case. So we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that there are thousands of persons on that list who would have left Guyana. We also can conclude beyond a shadow of a doubt that thousands of those persons died overseas. So let's not get involved with who's come back and who hasn't come. The fact is that thousands would have died overseas and are therefore not eligible persons to vote. They don't have any right any longer to be on the list, but they are on the list. However, the judgment of the Chief Justice suggests you can't take names off of the list, period. So this is a register of registrants. So again, we'll have infinite register of registrants. And she went on to suggest that you can't take the names off of the voters list, which is a subset of the register of registrants. It is extracted from the register of registrants of all the persons over the age of 18. So inevitably, your voters list ends up with these dead persons on it. And we know for a fact that persons who are overseas, not necessarily dead, but overseas, were voted for. So that to use biometrics is to ensure that no one can vote for any of those dead persons. Nandalal doesn't have a choice but to admit that such persons, the dead, are on the list. It's so logical. It is so factual that he can't deny that anymore. So he now poses the question. Chief Justice say, you can't take people off. We are doing what we can do, and what they're doing is nothing new. They're enshrining in law what has been the practice all the time, and that deals essentially with people who die in Guyana. So we're doing what we can do, and he poses the question, how can you solve the problem? And I say, let us first understand what is the problem. People who are dead and overseas being on the list is not in itself the problem. The problem is people who are dead and who are overseas being voted for. That's the problem. And if people who are dead and or overseas are being voted for, then if you cannot use re-registration to get a new list periodically, therefore dropping them off by that process, you can use biometrics, in which instance they remain on the list, but they can't have others exercise an illegal franchise. They can't have others vote for them. And so you really solve the problem of illicit, fraudulent voting by the biometric mechanism. And that's where we want to take it. So Nandalal has to accept, on one hand, that dead people are on the list, but for whatever reason, he's not going in the direction of a solution. And what he sought to do recently is to say, Alexander, you are partly responsible. GECOM should solve this problem. And I'm saying to him, GECOM is made up of 7 persons. And unfortunately, 4 of the 7, which doesn't include me, do not want to solve the problem. And they're your people, Nandalal. They're your people.
So why they don't want to solve the problem? Why they don't want to solve the problem? Why? Why they don't want to solve the problem, Beryl Crawford, of the dirty lists out front parts? Why they don't want to solve it? If we got the power to solve it, let me solve it. So that when we go to the next election, we understand it's valid and credible. Valid and credible. Let me solve the problem. Don't let me kick it down the road. All stakeholders want to be able to trust the results. What we're asking for here is not rocket science. It's not rocket science. All of us, Guyanese, want results emanating from our elections that we can trust. You see? That we know is right, that we know is factual. So what's the problem, Paulette Niles? Timna Ford, Claudette, Paulette? What's the problem, Orwin Don? What's the problem? We want a clean list. You claim you want a clean list. You are again. You're not opposed biometrics, so, but like you're supposed neither. You say you never say anything about against biometrics, but your commissioner's talking a lot. Talking a lot against biometrics. And so now we got to circle back to this problem. During the course of the last election, letters were dispatched from Claudette Singh. In one instance, with a list of names of persons who would have been dead as a doornail prior to March 2nd. And they said there's a pink list, and as persons coming to vote, you have to take off their names. Persons matching those names came and voted. And the general registrar says to GECOM in response to the letter, this list you submitted here, these people are dead. Same thing with immigration. GECOM, Claudette, submitted a list. So these people here should have been out of the jurisdiction. Word in Guyana, March 2nd, the chief immigration officer said, no, they were not in Guyana. So it's what kind of telepathy and, what's the other one? What kind of obvious thing is this, Baku story. Dead people voting, people who should have been somewhere, right here. Teleportation and all of that we're dealing with is high science here. The dark arts and high science. Sometimes I think you need to understand those things to deal with GECOM, the dark arts and high science. To deal with GECOM. Whatever happened to that information? Because GECOM, Alexander didn't write the letter. Donald Trotman didn't write the letter. Mr. Corbyn didn't write the letter. It was Claudette Singh who wrote to the agencies asking them the veracity of the arguments, whether these persons were overseas, whether these persons were dead, and both agencies write back saying, Kirk is right. What happened to the letters? Well, we put that to Mr. Alexander. We put that to Commissioner Vincent Alexander.
During the recount, we had already received returns from the chief immigration officer specifying that there were duplicates, in the sense that there were people out of the country who were being presented as having voted. What happened then was the chairperson said that matters of this nature are matters for a petition, and therefore, though we have the information, there's no action GECOM could take. I don't agree with her for more than one reason. GECOM refused to do a review of its system, which review could have helped them to understand how these things happen and how they could plug it. That review, they said, we can't do that because those matters are matters for a petition. Certainly not. A petition seeks to determine a result, whether the result was right or whether it was wrong. We were not focusing in the review on whether the result was right or wrong. We were focusing on whether the system has flaws, has gaps that could be plugged. GECOM refused to plug those. And so at the recount, it was put into cold storage. At GECOM, when we called for review, it was put into cold storage. And now that it has been again sent forward at the request of the Attorney General, it seems to be in cold storage. We're not hearing a word. And what was sent forward, incidentally, and this is interesting, is more than what GECOM had. GECOM had a certain number because the chairperson, having sent forward about 2 lists on the contention that this is a matter for a petition, did not send forward all of the lists. All have now gone forward. So we already have those lists which were verified, and we now have other lists to be verified, and we now have again the cold storage facility being reopened and then being apparently stocked in that facility, even as we move towards a local government election with the said list that can be manipulated and have people voted for who are dead or not present.
Yep. The list in cold storage. They want to deal with the list. The list with the dead people in cold storage. Commissioner Alexander tells us is in cold storage. So when they come to your communities, ask them, what did the list with the dead people and the people who are overseas? When we take it out to cold storage and solve that? When we take it out of cold storage? When we take it out? So Nanzal asking for evidence of voter fraud. He got the list, but he won't tell me. He asked for names, fresh names from GECOM. His friend Claude Singh sent him up new list, and they sent him more names than what they submitted initially of new AFC. Now you're asking for evidence that people voted illegally or fraudulently. What did the list tell you? When you run the list by the GRO and by the Chief Immigration Officer, what is the list telling us? What is the end product of that process we embarked on? They're just hanging in limbo. That's why you want to know. Just hanging in limbo. It's just hanging in limbo. Folks, we're going to wrap up here a little early today because we're heading off to another assignment so that we have credible and valid information for you guys as well. Tonight, we got to pick up on a little bit of the Russian aspect. Remember, there are some Russians here during elections causing some problems. Remember the Russians? Oh, we can talk about the Russians tonight. Valid, credible information. The Russians, the Russian connection. We can talk about them. Tonight. The Russians and their part in the last general and regional elections of March 2nd, 2022. The Russian factor. Today were the deads of the list. The GECOM deads of the list. We can talk about them tonight, guys. But we got to head off on assignment now for some more valid, credible information. So we wrap it up a little bit early. But good to see each and every one of you who've joined us. We're so grateful. Hundreds of you have joined the podcast. Candida Lane, Irwin Don, Gladstone Matthews. I see Timmer Ford. Good to have you, Timmer. And I see Michaela Andrew Coates, Beryl Crawford, Dolly Anderson. Good to have each and every one of you out front parts. Guys, we're going to circle back to these issues this evening. This evening, we're tackling the Russian connection. Amongst other things, because I hear, folks, we hear the Charanda still working. We hear Charanda still representing Guyana in India. The man's still working. Chorandos is still working. And we're picking up on that this evening as well, folks. We're going to see guys at that end when we come back this evening for a final show for the day. In the ring, folks. But thanks for joining our international podcast, Below the Belt. We're so grateful. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us. Have a great afternoon.